Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of my 3 and Out series for ranked matches in Dirty Bomb. This is going to be a very special episode where Max, the mighty Blue Orthodox, and I wax philosophical for an extensive period of time about the current state of the game. Hopefully you folks will enjoy it. I do have to apologize because I have been extremely busy lately and was therefore only able to edit the first 10 minutes or so of the audio in this episode really thoroughly. I think the rest of it is still pretty listenable, but you're probably going to notice some sighing and some breathing and some instances of us getting tongue-tied. So I want to preface this conversation by saying that you're probably going to hear a fair amount of negativity about certain aspects of what we're talking about here, but I want to make sure that we start off on the right foot, indicating that a lot of this negativity or criticism comes from a place of love. Because the simple fact of the matter, I think, is that we both really like Dirty Bomb, but I think that there are certain things, in particular, some very lingering long-term things about the game that have become sort of thorns in our collective side that I feel like at this point really need to be just put out there and addressed as we move forward with this series. I want to start out with some positive things so that when we get to the more negative stuff, it doesn't feel like we're just slamming on the game. But I thought a good thing to start with might be to talk a little bit about why we think the game is good. Like what's good about the game and why we kind of keep coming back to it and are generally attracted to it in the first place. And I think for me, the things that stand out are the things that are really important in separating Dirty Bomb from a lot of other free-to-play, team-based, first-person shooter type games is the fact that the gunplay, I think, is some of the best in the genre. And I also really think the character designs and the abilities that the characters have are pretty outstanding across the board. There might be a couple of characters or a couple abilities here or there that I think are a little overpowered or a little bit off the mark here and there, but for the most part, I think for me, it's those two things, the gunplay and the character design and special abilities that really make this game stand out.
Absolutely. For me, the gameplay of Dirty Bomb is what really shines for it. I actually think our friend Yukon put it pretty well. Because he said something that I never really connected the two until he pointed it out. And he said that the gameplay reminds him of just like a more objective-based Unreal Tournament. And I kind of feel like that's fair because the way that the parkour tactics are in it, and the jumping and the movement that you can utilize as any class, I think really is something that sets it apart from other games. The great thing about Dirty Bomb is there's so many dynamic little wrinkles that they added into the game, whether it's the different body types and how that affects the movement of that class that you're playing, the class itself, which lends itself to different play styles and the different combinations of those mercs that make up really cohesive teams and crazy combinations that you see actually working out, especially on the pro circuit. I just feel like there's so much depth to this game. That's why I really enjoy it. And it's a lot more depth that I think you are not really used to seeing in especially like a free-to-play game like this. And I think the card system with the mercs definitely lends itself to that.
Well, it definitely creates a bit of a loot lust scenario, right? Where it's like in your mind, especially after you play a given character for any significant length of time and start to see what the different perks they can have are and what the different weapons they can have are, you start to develop a theory about like what the ideal card would be. And I know I mentioned in a previous video I wanted to talk more about the card system and how it works, and this is probably as good a time as any to do that. Basically, the idea is that there are different metallic tiers of card. You have your lead cards, which have one perk on them, your iron cards, which have two perks on them, and your bronze cards, which have the full potential three perks. Now, anything above bronze is strictly cosmetic. That's just fancy outfits or fancy melee weapons that are effectively the same, they're just skinned differently. So really, if you're talking about a merc and you want to get a particular combination of weapon and perks for that merc, the bronze level is the highest level you need to go to from a mechanical standpoint. Anything beyond bronze, that's just bragging rights. That's just, oh, I have this rare skin or this unusual skin that makes me look different from everybody else.
I feel like that's another strength of Dirty Bomb. They kept it to a very controllable set of perks and set of possible weapon combinations and perk combinations. It keeps things leveled out.
I think they've done a very good job of creating a free to play mechanic that is not pay to win. There's absolutely nothing mechanically that you can do in this game that you cannot fairly easily do with just regular in-game currency that you accrue from simply playing the game. Now, you can spend a lot of money on this game very easily, but all that money is really going to get you is quicker access to the mercs and a greater possibility of more rare cosmetic items.
No tolerance for pay to win. We could safely say that Dirty Bomb doesn't have any of that.
I just wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned earlier before we move on to some of the other stuff I want to talk about, and that's talking about the pace of the game. I think there's a funny thing about Splash Damage as a developer when you look at their history. They oftentimes make things much more difficult on themselves by virtue of their design decisions, because obviously one of the big key principles of Dirty Bomb is the speed at which the game is played. But that creates a multitude of issues that they as developers have had to solve, and were, in my view at least, a big part of the reason why the game had so many issues early on and had such trouble attracting an audience, because when you create this super hyper fast paced game, if your netcode is not bang on, if your anti-cheat is not bang on, if you do not have all your nuts and bolts tightly screwed down from a technical standpoint, you really risk poisoning the well with regard to your player base or potential player base, because you can make a design decision with a game like this and say it's going to be a more slow-paced, more tactical, more methodical kind of movement system, and that buys you a lot of freedom in terms of your netcode and in terms of how much latency is tolerable and those sorts of things. And I think Splash Damage really set the bar very high for themselves with this game by making it as fast as they did, because a game this fast has such little tolerance for error or issue when it comes to netcode and performance and things like that. And I think it's interesting to see the change in the game between when it first shipped and sort of the middle of the game's lifespan, where things were really bad from a standpoint of latency and hacking and those sorts of things, to where the game is now, which I feel is in a very good, very optimized, very pleasant to experience state. For crying out loud, we play most of our competitive ranked matches on EU servers and have a pretty good experience from a performance standpoint. And I think that says something pretty significant about where the game's at technically.
I couldn't agree more. I think that ever since we started playing those ranked matches, just to kind of dip our toe into it again, because we had taken a little bit of a hiatus for it to kind of wait for further patches, it's come a long way, and I'm happy to report that. I think that this game just needs, at this point, more players. But the pacing, too, I think is another interesting thing that you touched upon, because speaking of ranked matches, the stopwatch mode, I think that would be an interesting thing to discuss, because I feel like the pacing of this game, I don't know if it really lines up with that mode all too well. But what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I think at this point we can kind of safely turn the corner and start being a little more critical of some things, and I think this is as good a place to start as any. Um, so I love stopwatch conceptually, right? I love the idea that when you play a competitive ranked match against another team, it's not just luck of the draw, who's an attacker versus who's a defender, and you run through the level once and whoever wins wins and whoever loses loses, right? I think there's something really genius and really cool about the idea that, hey, even if you start off as the attacker, it's just about how quickly you can get through the objectives, and then you still have to play the other side. You still have to play the defender's role in the second half of the match and prevent the other team from doing stuff faster than you did it when you were on offense. I love that conceptually. I think it's amazing. I think the problem with stopwatch and using it as the de facto mode in ranked matches is that some of the levels are just a bit too long and a bit too involved and have a bit too much to do in them, to the point where even a highly efficient, highly skilled team on offense that's really knocking it out of the park is still going to take, 5 to 7 minutes to get through all of those tasks. And on some of the longer levels, like Train Yard, I don't know if it's even possible to get some of that stuff done more quickly than, say, 7 minutes, because that level has so many objectives. I mean, you got to blow the first bomb, you got to blow the one in the blocker carriage, and you've got to deliver the two objectives on offense. And that level is so big with so much sprawl and so many alternate paths. And because, especially in ranked, these matches are 5v5, that's another thing, right? Some of these levels are so big that to try to cover them completely in a 5v5 scenario is kind of tricky. So I think for me, the big issue with stopwatch is not so much stopwatch itself, but the fact that it's the de facto mode for ranked, and the fact that several of the levels that are in the game are so big and so complex that they don't lend themselves well to that mode, because the matches end up taking upwards of half an hour or more if the teams are at all competent and can kind of neutralize each other.
True. Yeah, there are a handful of maps that I think that are just too long for that mode. Just hands down. The objectives are either too hard to get to, or like he was saying, too many different pathways, too many different too many ways to take it, and too many ways to nullify it, where again it kind of drags the match out. Now I know that that's kind of popular in comp these days for whatever reason, to make like a really long match, but I feel like given the, again, kind of the pacing that this game runs at, I don't think it's very conducive. I like stopwatch. I do. I'm not sure if that is the be all end all mode that they should be trying to sell the competitive and the ranked on, because I think that it takes too long, and on top of that, trying to get people to stay in a match too is pretty difficult.
Indeed, indeed. Like I can think of a couple of levels off the top of my head. Like I think Underground is a really good example of a map that works well in stopwatch, because you basically have two objectives. And they're two fairly simple bomb plants. You've got a couple of side objectives on the way between the first and the second main objective, in the form of the gas extraction on the right side, or the blocking of the defender doors on the left side. But for the most part, that's a very tight, very efficient, generally speaking, very quick match, right? Like you don't see too many games on Underground, A, that go to time, and B, where the attackers don't complete the task, within, say, like, let's say, like 7 to 9 minutes. And so that even if you have both sides completing the task in that time frame, you're talking about like a 14 to 18 minute match, which I think is just about perfect. Like, to me, an ideal kind of ranked dirty bomb match takes between 15 and 20 minutes. And I think when you get up into that like 25, 30-minute plus mark, it really becomes a fatigue issue to a certain extent, because the game is so fast paced and it's so intense, and people's attention spans are so short, especially when you talk about pub matching and stuff like that. It's really difficult to get a good quality match on some of those bigger, more complex maps. And I guess that kind of transitions us into that topic specifically, which, you know, when I started this series, this three and out series for this game, I knew that this was going to be a challenging game to do this for because I knew the matches were going to be long. I knew that there were issues in the competitive matchmaking for the game in terms of people dropping out of matches and creating discrepancies in teams and that sort of thing. But I don't think even I, being as experienced with the game as I was at that point, was fully prepared for the slump that we hit after episode 3 because there were two sessions that we did, in the days following the most recent episode that you folks have seen before this, where we did several matches in a row and just could not get a good match. Just multiple draws, multiple instances of people leaving on our team, basically setting us up to fail. We had one match where literally I think we were the only two people left in the match who didn't quit, and which prompted us to kind of discover the fact that the game will actually let you leave a match if somebody else has abandoned it for a significant amount of time prior to you leaving without it hurting your ranking and such. And I definitely want to talk about that and in terms of how it affects this video series and how we make the determination about what we're going to show and what we're going to cut out and what we're going to count as far as the three and out goes. But I do want to talk first a little bit about just the frustration involved in trying to get a good match, trying to uh, you know play with random people when you've got such a propensity on a lot of people's part to just drop out of a match midstream if things don't immediately go their team's way.
Well, because it's so frustrating. Because we always say it too, especially as soon as we get into a match and we're maybe 3 or 4, because it usually happens around the 3 or 4 minute mark. And if the team is kind of struggling to get that initial objective, somebody either goes AFK or they leave entirely. And that is so frustrating because not only is Dirty Bomb at its best when you have 5 on 5, full people going, like it's a really fun and compelling game when everybody's in and everybody's committed to that match and you get to play it out regardless of if you win or lose. It's just a fun experience. It's such a bummer when people leave, and the reality is like we are two people trying to rank for a 10-player match and we cannot find 8 other people who want to commit 20 to 30 minutes to a match. Like that is an issue that this game is trying to rectify at this point.
Absolutely. And I think that is, to me, the thing that is most recurring and is most disheartening, when I think about playing Dirty Bomb in ranked mode, is just the idea that it's so hard to get a series of good matches going where you don't have at least one person bailing on one side or the other. Because the thing is, like, I'm all for winning. I like winning. Winning is awesome. But I don't want to win because like one or two people on the other team left. Like that's not a win to me, right? Like that's a win mathematically, but it's not satisfying, right? Like stomping on people because you have a 1 or 2 man advantage on them is not what I come to this game for, right? And by the same token, sometimes it can be kind of a cool struggle or a cool thing to overcome a one player deficit and like still pull out a win or a draw or something. But when it starts happening on a regular basis, like I think we had in the one session where we recorded after episode 3, we had 2 matches where we had to play to a draw because either a person on our team or a person on the other team dropped out, and that was in one session, in one, like 1 to 2 hour recording session that we did. And it's like the first time it happens, like it did in episode 2, that's kind of exciting, or it's kind of, exhilarating. And I think the match that we showed in episode 2 actually was a full 5 on 5 draw, which was very, I think, compelling and very exciting, despite, ending in a draw. But when you have these mismatched teams, it just really sucks a lot of the fun out of the game. And so I am kind of encouraged by the fact that they've been talking, especially in their most recent developer video, about stiffening the penalty on dropping out of matches for season 3. I'm kind of curious as to exactly what they're going to do in that regard because I kind of feel like sometimes when I hear them talk about certain things they want to do with the game, they say the right words, but something gets lost in the details and something kind of gets lost in translation, I think, between what the community is expressing to them and what like people's general sentiment is about what they want to see happen in the game and what they and as developers end up doing, with that feedback or as a result of that. Because I feel like the more that I follow Splash Damage as a developer, the more that I understand that in a lot of ways they're very well intentioned, and I think their hearts are in the right place when it comes to trying to do the right thing by the people that are playing the game. But I also feel like sometimes from a communication standpoint, there's a bit of an issue where they don't quite grasp what it is that people are telling them when they're giving them feedback about the game sometimes.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I just have to ask, are you referencing their last what is it? Their last update video that they
Yeah,
posted?
yeah.
I think to.
Yeah, that was yesterday, as of the time of this recording, that they posted that, the one about the threesomes. Which, by the way, I wasn't even aware that you could not queue as a party of 3 or 4 in ranked. I didn't even realize that that was a thing until I watched that video because we've never tried to play ranked with more than, the two of us. So that kind of blew my mind to even know that that was a thing. And I think it's kind of funny, right? Because in the video they kind of make a joke out of it, but I'm like, how is that ever even a thing in the game? How is it like news that you're fixing this 2 years later when like it shouldn't have been there from day one as a problem?
Yeah, which it's little things like that that just kind of it personally drives me nuts. It's like how like you said, how is that a problem? How is that a thing? Like I can understand how some people because another thing that they touched upon in the video is like the pricing of mercs or whatever. Like I get it, it's free to play model. You have to make your money somewhere. Like that I get, but again, ranked not being able to have multiple people like upwards of 3 or 4 being able to rank at one time, something's kind of wrong.
Yeah, so apparently the way ranked currently works, and again, we've just never come up against this because it's always been the two of us playing ranked. Um, uh, but like say for example, if we wanted to play with Yukon right now, we could not do that, right? We could not queue as a threesome for ranked. The game wouldn't let it happen. So apparently, the only thing you can do is solo, duo, or a full party of 5, and there's nothing in between.
Huh.
Now, apparently, they have realized that this is an issue and that they're going to fix it. And this also kind of dovetails into the elephant in the room for me with this game and what for me I think is going to end up being the meat of this conversation because this to me is the single biggest problem with Dirty Bomb that it has had since its inception that I am just desperately on my hands and knees begging you Splash Damage, please, please, in the name of all that which does not suck, please hurry up and get that party system in place for casual matchmaking. Please. You're killing me. You're killing me softly and slowly every day that goes by that system is not in the game. Because if you ask me, and this is my own personal opinion, but I firmly and fully believe that the reason why Dirty Bomb has not succeeded as a game in terms of that big mass broad appeal that you really need to cultivate a sustainable, compelling, competitive community for a game is because you cannot play this game casually with your friends in whatever size party you want, one, two, three, four, or five, and play on the same team so that you can learn the maps, develop strategy, learn how to play together, learn how to play your different roles and switch between mercs and do all that stuff before you ever even go into a ranked match. And the fact that this game has existed now for well over 2 years without a casual party matchmaking system is the reason why it has not been as successful as it should be, in my opinion.
Because as it sits, building upon what you were saying, because as it stands, there, it goes basically one of two ways. You either sit into a ranked match and you wait for 5 minutes to get paired up possibly against people who are Cobalt, which, for those of you who haven't played the game, is the highest you can get in terms of like the ranked tiering. And those people have been playing this game for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. No exaggeration, thousands of hours being put into this game. And beyond them, there are maybe 1,000 people like me and VT that, maybe pick up the game, maybe play it semi-often, again, 2 hours, 3 hours a day here and there, but they're not putting in that hardcore time that other people are doing. And that skill discrepancy is happening because you cannot party with your friends, and you cannot party with your friends. You can't go and because the only way as of now to actually go and practice the game outside of ranked is going into pub matches. And the most frustrating thing about that, about trying to just find a server, is that you can't really choose which team you're on with a friend. It's kind of like you're rolling the dice and hoping that the team balance puts you with a friend. There's no formal party system where you can go and, again, go practice against bots or go practice in pubs with friends, because there's no party system and
No bots.
no bots. It's like, how do you expect people to commit to a game? I mean, again, like there's probably like 2,000 people that are playing this game on a regular basis, but there would be so many more if they had a party system in there, again, it would give people a chance to practice not only against other people who are their lower levels, but to start to learn the maps and learn the mercs more. Because being thrown into a pub match, again, possibly against really high level people who've been playing this for ever since the game came out, or throwing, again, really kind of throwing caution to the wind and trying to like solo queue or duo queue against, who knows what rank they might run into if they can't find a match that's suitable for where they're at from a skill perspective. It's like a meat grinder is what the game kind of sits as right now. Like, unless you have spent at least 100 hours in the game at this point, you're probably going to get chewed up, just because you're going to be new to it.
And I think we need to make an important distinction between ranked and pub play, right? Because I can tell you this from my own personal experience over the past several weeks, the difference between what goes on in pub servers and what goes on in these ranked matches might as well be night and day, right? Like I always felt like uh, casual, objective, quick play matches in this game were kind of challenging. Not like anything crazy, but certainly like challenging. But the level of challenge that you come up against in these ranked matches completely blows that out of the water. Like, if you get accustomed to playing ranked matches in this game and get at all good at it, and then you go back into regular casual matchmaking, you are going to just destroy people because the level of competition is so much, is so lopsided by comparison. But that's because what Blue was talking about earlier, that the the ranked matchmaking has just become this crucible of fire in this game, where the only people doing it are either crazy people like us or people who are extra special crazy and have done nothing but play this game over the past couple of years and are just basically like demigods at it. And so the problem that you run into is, because there's not a huge player base for the game, you don't have a big enough pool of people to actually support ranked matches for people who are new to the game. And that's really, to me, what the issue is. It's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, right? Because I'll give a little shout out and a little plug to steamcharts.com, which is a site that I use fairly often when I'm working on analysis videos for games to like try to back up some of what I'm talking about with some facts and figures and stuff. And what steamcharts.com basically does is they take all of the metadata about like how many people are playing games concurrently on Steam and categorize it and sort it and let you do all sorts of neat searches and stuff against it. So you can basically tell to a pretty fine de- fine degree and level of detail how, especially with a game like Dirty Bomb that's only available on Steam, just how many people play that game on a daily basis and how many people play it concurrently. And the thing about Dirty Bomb is you are absolutely right. It's between 1,000 and 2,000 concurrent players most of the time. You might see it peak somewhere up around 3,000 players on a weekend or when there's a tournament happening or something like that. But you compare that level of player concurrency to something like Counter-Strike or Battlefield or any of these other big top tier first person shooters and it's no, it's nothing. It's not even close, right? And I think you can't overstress or can't overemphasize enough just how important that casual matchmaking piece is to cultivating and growing and creating an audience for this game. Because for people to come into the game and have a good experience with it, they need their crazy friend who came in and did all the hard work of figuring out the game to be able to bring them in and take them under their wing and show them the ropes of the game in a friendly kind of, soft, pleasant manner. And right now, without the party system, there's no way to do that. Because like, if I had a friend who never played Dirty Bomb before, and I wanted to play with him and be on the same team with him and show him the ropes of the game, literally the only way for that to happen right now is for him to play through the tutorial, grind up to level 5 so he can unlock ranked matchmaking, and then we play together in ranked where we're going up against Cobalts and all these other 1,000+ hour players, and that experience is not going to end well. So there needs to be another way. There needs to be another way to introduce people into the game, or else you're going to have and continue to have what you have now, which is stagnation of the community and this slow bleeding and erosion of the player base over time because there's no new blood coming in. There's no new injection of people because you get 10, 20,000 people concurrently playing this game, you'll have plenty of people to play ranked against, even if you've never played ranked before, because with that many people playing the game simultaneously, just statistically, you're going to have somebody who's at your skill level. The thing is, they've created this great mechanism for tracking data and tracking like XP per second and all that sort of thing. So the mechanics of the game are all there and poised and primed and ready, but there's just not enough people to make that stuff work. And it, like I said before, it's a chicken and the egg thing. They need the system there and in place to encourage people to come and play with their friends who are already interested in the game in the first place, and then the sort of problem solves itself because at that point you have enough people playing the game at the same time on a consistent basis to make it work.
Absolutely, because again, you need those casual players to not only get into your game, but possibly want to even make that step into like putting some serious time. And again, for a free-to-play game, possibly spend some money. And I think that is more important on top of being just able to grab people and get them into your game and have them spending time on your game. But since it's free to play, they can't just rely on these 2,000, 3,000 hour whales. Really, in a way, it's kind of what, I mean, you name dropped Counter-Strike. That's one of the things that Counter-Strike does. I know plenty of people that play Counter-Strike and they're not good at the game at all. They're like low ranked levels. But you know what? What keeps that game going is buying all the skins and buying all the cases and keeping that game going from a monetary perspective because those casual players are coming, and at the very least they know that they can go play a casual match with their friends and and dick around and have fun. They don't have to be on. They know that they're not pros, but they just like the game and they like to have fun and they like to buy the skins and stuff. Like there's no casual audience for this game because again, everything that they've done and everything the way that things have kind of shaken out is it's just geared toward those people who've just are hardcore about it, and there's no middle ground for anybody else.
And I think as more time goes by, right, it exacerbates the problem, right? Because as more time goes by and the game gets older and older, and people, it's less and less in people's mind to even think about or consider the game, that it really creates a problem because they've kind of painted themselves into a corner. And I know that they've been talking about casual matchmaking for quite some time. They've run a couple of tests, which, by the way, a couple of hours is not enough time to run a casual matchmaking test. I'm sorry. Like, I care about this game, right? Like, I follow this game, and both of those casual matchmaking events were so short that even I, as somebody who was genuinely interested in trying to participate in that event and help them collect data and test the system and that sort of thing, did not have an opportunity to participate in either of those events. And that's a problem, right? Like, I get that they're trying to not upset the apple cart and not like upset people by taking away the server browser or taking away ranked matches for the time that they're running the casual matchmaking test. But here's the thing, and this again speaks to the whole problem of the game population being so small. You really shouldn't have to do that. Like, there are enough of us who care about this game and want to play it and want to see it succeed that if you give us a week and say, hey, casual matchmaking is an option, we're not going to disable ranked, we're not going to disable server browser, but we're going to give you a week to fiddle with this thing and even suggest some times where people could consolidate and try to do this stuff together if they want to help test the system. Like, don't just give us a 3-hour window and say, okay, all the other modes are disabled and now you have to play this mode, because we know that if we don't force you to do it, that nobody's going to do it. That's not the right approach. And again, goes back to the whole communication thing, and where I think like they struggle sometimes. Like, there's a way to get people excited and hyped and interested in supporting this casual matchmaking thing, because the thing is, even if you're a ranked player, even if you're one of those Cobalt guys and you don't care one little bit about casual matchmaking and it doesn't affect you, you think it doesn't affect you at all, and you just want to sit there and play your Cobalt ranked matches against other Cobalt people and grind out ranked cards, guess what? Casual matchmaking does affect you, because if nobody plays this game and the population of this game dwindles down to nothing over the next year, this game is not going to exist in another year or two. Like, you can't be narrow-minded about it, and you can't, cut off your nose to spite your face when it comes to this sort of stuff. You have to accept that a game being popular and a game having an avenue and a route and a method for people to participate in it casually is essential to its success. And I think for a long time, Splash Damage themselves were very resistant to that idea and almost kind of thumbed their nose at it. But I think even they, at this point, have seen the writing on the wall, and they have really turned a corner, and I give them all the credit in the world for being able to turn that corner and realize that this is something that their game needs to be successful.
And again, I can't stress that enough. Like the casual matchmaking is really good because again, take it from somebody who's almost spent 1,000 hours. I know it's sad in playing Counter Strike. It's true. I played Counter Strike Global Offensive for 1,000 hours. The most fun that I have, and I shit you not, audience, the most fun that I've had in that game is playing casual matches because I don't have to be on. I don't have to deal with tryhards. I could just go and have a good time. I can go and do all the bunny hopping I want, run around with dual Berettas and just have a good time. And there's something to be said about just being able to sit down and have a good time. Like this weird mentality that they were basically operating on, which was like, okay, there's going to be like this hardcore matchmaking thing, and this is going to be like the next big competitive first-person shooter. It's like, yeah, all that's great and it's fine, but if you can't play that also casually, and just have a good time and mess around with it, it's not going to be a fun time for people who just want to go and kill a few hours and aren't going to try and take the game too seriously. I mean, again, full props to them for starting make to put steps forward, right, and going that direction, but they have to really ramp it up. Like at this point, again, like you said, do the casual matchmaking thing for a week. Like then you'll get all the info in the world. And again, don't disable any of the game modes because that just doesn't make any sense.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, and I definitely want to start moving this thing towards being wrapped up because I don't want this to get too terribly long. But the one other thing I want to say about the casual matchmaking stuff is, it's taken so long for that system to come to fruition at this point. Because, I mean, they have literally been talking about it for well over 6 or 8 months now at this point, since I first started hearing them actually kind of come around and start talking about it seriously. And I really hope that the reason it's taking so long for them to do it is because they're really putting a lot of serious thought into it and trying to make it as good as it can possibly be. So I'm just gonna take a second here and tell you, Splash Damage, what I think that casual matchmaking system should be like. Okay, and maybe it's nothing like this. Maybe it's exactly like this. I don't know. I don't have any insight or direct contact with them. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but my kind of dream version of how that system should work is you get into the game, you pull up your friends list, and you say, create a party, and you invite however many of your friends you want to invite, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then you just say quick match. And once you got your party, it goes and it finds a server that has 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, however many spaces it needs, and you join as a group to that server. And it keeps you all on the same team. You all play together as you go through matches, and matchmaking or team balance, between matches, shuffles people around as it needs to. And this is a really critical point that I'm going to mention, and this might blow your mind if you haven't thought about it, so get your notepad out. What I think would be perfectly acceptable and what I think would be a really good thing to do is if you come to the end of a match and you're at a situation where the team balancing algorithm says, hey, there's no way we can keep these 3 people together because they're doing too well versus everyone else on the server, and we need to split them up. Instead of doing that, keep the party together and find a different server and automatically migrate that party to a different server. Do not force the issue, right? Do not say, oh, you have to stay on this server to keep this party and keep this party together. It doesn't, those two things are not intertwined, right? They can be mutually exclusive. You can bounce us around to as many different servers as you need to give us quality matches and make the experience good for everybody, as long as our party stays together and we stay on the same team, because that is what this party system needs to be about. And okay, I'll even give you an extra freebie if you want to have an option in there when you create your party to say, we don't care if we get split up and play on opposite teams, and have a little checkbox or whatever. That's fine. Because I know there are some people who are like, we want to be on the same server, but we don't necessarily care if we are on the same team. Build that option into the system too. But by default, or at least by some form of option, the way this party system needs to work is I group with up to 4 of my friends, and we always can play on the same team. That is the whole point in my mind of wanting a system like that. So whatever you need to do from a technical standpoint, whether it's, server migration, improvement to the team balancing algorithm, whatever has to happen to make that feasible and possible is what I feel like needs to be done. And that you see that done in plenty of other games. I'm not going to name drop, but big AAA shooters have been doing this for a long time now. And I think if you want to play in that realm, if you want to get large numbers of people excited about this game and committed to it and playing it and investing in it with their time and their money, that is a thing that has to happen.
And keep in mind, Splash Damage, you just got that information or that idea for free. You didn't have to pay anybody. Look at that. We're paying you most of the time. Just
Nice.
remember.
All right, so I feel like we've been I feel like all the salt. I feel like my salt shaker is empty. I feel like I've I feel like I've thoroughly seasoned and salted on Dirty Bomb, and I've said my piece. I have really expressed probably more than I should have some thoughts and opinions about the current state of that game and what's going on with it. And so I did want to talk a little bit about kind of where we are with the series and kind of why we chose to do this particular episode in this format. And it's because, like I said earlier, we had that bad stretch of games where we tried, for a couple of days to record sessions and just had, a couple of losses where we lost because we got abandoned by our teammates, which I don't know that I necessarily would count those. I think we had two losses that were straight up losses where we had even teams and we just got steamrolled. And, we had a couple of draws in there. We had a couple of wins too. We had a win, where we had like a man or two man advantage and it was just kind of a blowout. And I would never show that match because it's just kind of uninteresting. And, we had a straight up, nice win that I'll probably use for the next episode after this one. But kind of what I wanted to do is set a few addendums to the series moving forward. So I think what's probably going to end up happening is I'm going to update the sort of tally for the series at this point and say what we have here is uh, 2 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws at this point is where I kind of see the series as sitting. Okay. I will tell you for sure, audience, that there is going to be at least 2 more episodes because we have one more win in the can that will be the next episode after this one. So you can look forward to that. But the other thing about that particular episode is it takes place on the chapel map, which we've already seen twice before in the series. So another kind of wrinkle that I'm going to add to the kind of criteria for how the series is going to work moving forward is if we get to a point where we've shown the same map 3 times, we won't show matches from that map anymore, and any matches that we play on that map won't count against or for our tally. So, if we go to play next time and we play on Chapel and we get obliterated, it doesn't matter because we've already done our 3 matches on Chapel at this point. Because I want to show the other maps in the game as much as possible. And the other thing, of course, is we have this new map, Dockyard, which is coming out on the 23rd of May. And I want to get at least one episode, even if it ends up being the last episode for the series, that features that new map because new maps do not come out very often for this game. So I want to make sure we get at least one in there. But I think this is a good time for us to kind of solicit some feedback from the audience. I've done that in previous episodes, but in particular in this one, because I think there probably will be a little bit of time in between when this episode goes live and when we start actually recording again to capture more footage for future episodes. So if you folks have suggestions about things you'd like to see in the series, characters you'd like to see us play as, maps you'd like to see us play on, that sort of thing, definitely get those in the comment section on this particular video, and we'll be sure to take those into consideration moving forward. And just in general, let us know what you're thinking about the series and what you think about this sort of style of episode kind of injected into the midst of things. And I think that's pretty much it for me as far as stuff I wanted to cover. Max, did you have any other additional thoughts or things you wanted to throw out there?
Really all I want is more people to play the game because I like it. I love that game. I want more people to play it to keep it going.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to reiterate what I said at the very beginning. We come to this from a position of love. We really like this game. We want it to be successful. We have nothing but, good, warm, fuzzy feelings about the game, generally speaking. But at the same time, we can see the flaws. You know, we see the problem areas, we see the things that are struggles or that are holding the game back or making things more difficult than they probably need to be for people who are trying to get into the game in the first place. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from, and we hope that both you as viewers, and if Splash Damage happens to see this, then all the better, uh, can take that into consideration and really take this feedback and understand where it's coming from and why we're doing it. And I guess with that, having said all that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos from me in the future, be sure to hit subscribe. And we will see you next time. Oh well, I'm going to open these cases at least. It gives me something to smile about, hopefully. Oh, dude. Oh my god. Oh my god. I can't
What did
even
you
right now.
what did you get?
Gold Nader.
Wow. From a what? From a crappy
From a
regular
regular ass
drop.
case.
Your luck with that is insane.
Wow. I have to bask in the radiance of this for a moment.
Well, that was that was what all that dying was for, I guess.